This is the lecture video for pages 142 through 152. We have had the Boston Tea Party. Colonists are now whipping up into a frenzy, and the Crown needs to figure out what they're going to do. Parliament takes a hard line. They play good cop, bad cop between the Prime Minister and Parliament. They take a conciliatory position on taxation and trade. Then they want to tax them even more, and so they really don't know what they want to do. It's like the good cop, bad cop. Like I said, conciliatory position is a plan proposed that says, all right, as long as you guys tax yourselves at the rate at which we would tax ourselves, that we would want you to be taxed, and send that money to us, then we won't tax you. Well, that kind of defeats the purpose. Why would I tax myself what you're going to tax me? Or, it just doesn't make sense. So we don't want this to happen, and it just causes even more problems. The British are fortifying Boston. They've dissolved the Massachusetts legislature in the coercive acts. The colonists are assembling their own revolutionary governments. They're gathering arms. They're organizing militia volunteers, known as Minutemen, to be ready at a moment's notice. And it is that important. They start setting up committees of safety, which is trying to establish regular governments under the new state constitution. Committees of safety continue to function throughout the revolution. They are there to help get this going and keep it together. Another big thing, first the Minutemen. Again, militiamen ready at a moment's notice. Okay, before we get to the battles of Lexington and Concord, the colonists, as I stated earlier, have been whipped up into a frenzy, and they really get whipped up into a frenzy with Common Sense. Common Sense is a book that changes American history, written in 1776 by Thomas Paine. It gets the colonists to see the idea that a revolution is where we need to be. It's common sense that we need to take action. And so it gets more colonists on the revolutionary side, on the Whig side. Then comes the battles of Lexington and Concord. The British hear rumors that the two heads of the Sons of Liberty, Sam Adams and John Hancock, are in Lexington, and they're going to go get them. So they dispatch troops from Boston, and they march all the way to Lexington, roughly 20 miles. They meet a small group of militia, fire on them. We don't know who fires first. It's called the shot heard around the world. The American Revolution begins. And our militiamen retreat. Well, the British don't find John Hancock or Sam Adams, nor do they find our stockpile of weapons that they think they're going to find. So, they hear that, oh no, they aren't in Lexington, they're in Concord, so they have to march even further. When they get there, we attack them at Old North Bridge. We ambush them. As they are running away and hiding, for lack of a better term, we pop out and shoot them from every which way. This is so against the ways of war. The ways of war at this point in time are you're lined up against each other, and shot at each other. So that didn't happen. So as the British are retreating 2 by 2, they march 20 miles in the day. Now they got to make it all the way back to Boston, and we follow them the whole way. Okay. There's a bend in the road. We don't take the bend. We cut through the forest, shoot at them when they make it to where we are. We just basically harass them all the way until they get back to Boston. They have 200 and some odd casualties. They're called us cowards for fighting that way. But guerrilla warfare is the way we're going to win. Very quickly after the battles of Lexington, shot heard around the world, and then the Battle of Concord, the Second Continental Congress becomes a government. Okay, the Second Continental Congress takes leadership of the rebellion and they in effect become the national government. And the first thing they do is choose George Washington. It's not that he has a great track record of winning, but it's that we have hindsight in this. We have hindsight in the fact that he puts down his weapon after the war and allows the United States to become the United States. He doesn't become a dictator because he very well could have. One of the first responses we have after the battles of Lexington and Concord is the Battle of Bunker Hill. The Battle of Bunker Hill should have been named the Battle of Breed's Hill. We climbed a hill, we mounted a hill outside the encampment of the British, and we used our cannons to fire upon them. In doing so, in the commotion and everything, we got on the wrong hill. We were on Breed's Hill. So the battle's known as the Battle of Bunker Hill, but it's really the Battle of Breed's Hill. And it kind of ingrains in the British that, holy crap, this isn't just a few ragtag individuals. This is the majority of the people, and they're ready to fight. On July 5th, 1775, we send the Olive Branch Petition, largely written by John Dickinson, which says, hey, that we won't have any further aggression against each other. We are loyal to King George III. We'll be ready to go. Now, the next day, John Dickinson, the document that his take goes into a place. It's the Declaration of Cause and Necessity of Taking Up Arms. The next day this document is put out there. Basically what we're saying is if the British don't accept our Olive Branch Petition, then these are the reasons why we are taking up arms against the British. We want to have our reasoning. Okay, we want to be prepared. We were already going to keep arming for resistance. If they sign the Olive Branch Petition, we go on, everything's good. If not, we're going to get ready to fight. Some of the first battles, and this map shows the Battle of Bunker Hill and the Battle of Quebec. It says early military successes in New England and the South are offset by failures in Canada. We make a big mistake. Instead of hitting directly, up here and knocking out the lifeline, the St. Lawrence River, we basically split up our military and attack forts of the British in Canada, and we utterly get destroyed. And we actually have calls for independence. We realize, hey, this is not going to work with reconciling with the British. We are fighting for independence, and it's seen as a necessary outcome for all American efforts. Not everybody fighting for the Americans has America's best interest at heart, which we'll talk about momentarily. But at this point, we are ready to figure out something and declare our independence. The movement towards formal separation culminated July 4th, 1776. That's when the Declaration of Independence is signed. John Adams believed that the day we voted on the Declaration of Independence, July 2nd, would be the day that would go down in history as our Independence Day. Because on that day, even though it wasn't signed, we unofficially announced our Declaration of Freedom from the British. But then it takes a day or so, a little bit longer than a day, for people who write nice and pretty to write nice and pretty on the Declaration and write like 12 declarations, because there's 12 of them, because we want to keep at least one copy. No, there's actually more than 12, because one went to every single colony, and one went to every single colony, and then we had to send one to the British, and then one. So I mean, I think there was upwards of 15. Anyways, I digress. Again, Declaration of Independence, written by Thomas Jefferson, which has the contract theory of government, which means the contract theory of government is that we have rights that are guaranteed to us. Alienable, there it is. Life, liberty, property. Again, Jefferson changes it to make it sound better. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But it's the government is part of the contract between the rulers and the ruled. The people are no longer required to obey it and must establish a new government that will do a better job of protecting them if they don't. Okay? So it's got to be obligated and obeyed. So we feel that with the Declaration of Independence, they weren't obligated to it. They didn't do that, and bam, done. Okay, elements of this go back to John Locke, and so on and so forth, as we talked about previously in class. The Declaration of Independence made the position of the Tories unattainable, as they suddenly became enemies of the American people. It's an estimated 20% of the free population sided with Britain, and many either fought with the British or became refugees. Again, 30-30-30 is a good number. 30%, 30%, 30%. Again, Tories, Whigs, undecideds. Washington worked to develop a professional, disciplined army that could defeat British soldiers in large engagements. Many foreign soldiers of fortune and idealists offered their service to the United States, but the British were the ones that took the Germans up on their offer. The Prince of Hesse offers his men, the Hessians, up to fight for the British. He gets paid $1 million or $500,000 a year, and then a certain amount of money for every single Hessian that's killed or wounded, and they are hired guns, aka mercenaries. Even though they're not getting paid, they are still not British, and they're fighting for the British. The British are paying to have them fight for them. Life was tough under harsh conditions for the Continental Army. Dissatisfaction led to times where people just wanted to give up. We have the two right-hand men of Washington, Ethan Allen and Benedict Arnold. And Benedict Arnold plays a huge role in helping us in the North in the beginnings of the war, but he doesn't think we can win. And he also doesn't like the fact that he is not the right-hand man. He feels that Ethan Allen has more of a upper hand in the ear of Washington, so he defects to the other side and becomes a traitor. Also, a few soldiers in Newburgh, New York, try to mutiny against Washington, and it's known as the Newburgh Conspiracy. Women accompanied military forces on both sides, performing important services as nurses, cooks, anything and everything they could do. The wagon train of people that were going to help between slaves and women and other people stretched for miles past the soldiers. At the very beginning of the PowerPoint, there was a picture of a tent that was Washington's tent. He had a floor brought in. I mean, you could just imagine all the stuff that had to be brought in by the British and for their support services. Both sides employed African Americans. Approximately 5,000 fought against the British. Quite a few fight for the British as well. They are promised freedom by the British if they fight the Americans in the Revolution. Both sides sought Native American allies, but more groups backed the British. Again, choose the wrong side again. The war promoted greater unity among Native Americans, and it was a big deal. Okay, it was a big deal. Them choosing the wrong side, and it's going to come back. And there is no justification for what we eventually will do to the Native Americans, but this in part has to do with that they chose the side of the British. And that's it for 142 through 152.